First, anger at a last-minute change in COVID restrictions boiled over at the border between Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. Protesters shut down the main crossing for most of the day. They're upset that Nova Scotia changed its reopening plan yesterday. The province is still requiring people to self-isolate if they're entering from New Brunswick. That restriction does not apply to people coming into Nova Scotia from PEI or Newfoundland and Labrador. The premiers of the Atlantic provinces met this afternoon. And have they figured out a solution? Blaine Higgs is the premier of New Brunswick. He's in Fredericton. Premier Higgs, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
So you met with your Atlantic counterparts earlier today. Have you reached some sort of an agreement that could see this border skirmish ending?
Well, we do have a kind of a path forward that's being analyzed right now. So it's with Premier Rankin and his chief of public health. So they'll kind of look at that. We basically, David, we proposed that. You know, we've been guarding borders here since the beginning of this whole process for 16 months, and we're still doing that. We're stopping every car that comes across the Quebec border into New Brunswick, and we asked them, you know, where they're going, and if they're moving into Nova Scotia or PEI or Newfoundland, we say, well, you need to be familiar with the rules and regulations of that province, and this is currently what they require, and we said, well, we record all that data today, and you know, if we can share that with directly so that they can follow up with travelers to follow their rules, then that should work. So that's kind of where it is, and that's being contemplated right now.
Okay, so I want to make sure I understand that. You're collecting data at your border as people coming in, and your proposal is to share that data with the other provinces so they can then monitor what travelers from outside of the Atlantic region might try to cross into Nova Scotia or wherever from New Brunswick?
That's correct. We've always had that data. It just hasn't been a request or requirement to share it. I mean, our border authorities and public safety do talk, and they have throughout the pandemic. But we're saying we can make that a formal process, and we're doing it anyway. And then you know who's coming, and you can ensure that they follow the rules of your province.
Okay, so this is the proposal you've made to Premier Rankin and to Dr. Strang. They're looking at this now?
Yes.
Is that the situation? What was their initial reaction in the meeting? Do they seem positive to this idea, or what was the response?
Well, I mean, I think there's certainly a level of interest there in how they would monitor people that are coming. And then that would allow us to open up with the Atlantic region, you know, as a bubble once again, and so they're analyzing, does that work for them? How would they monitor it? How do they measure it? But they can put whatever protocol they want at their border in Nova Scotia, and they can meet these you know, new entrants, and then they can follow whatever protocol they want, and that's not unusual throughout the process. I mean, PEI's been doing that from the beginning, and certainly Newfoundland has in many ways. So I think that's something worth considering, and then it could indeed solve the impasse at the end of the day.
But we had this pretty extraordinary situation at the Nova Scotia-New Brunswick border. I'm wondering what responsibility you feel you bear for these tensions.
Well, David, you know, we put our plan out back in May 27th, and we asked the people of New Brunswick, you know, if you meet these triggers and we have a low COVID contacts, or we have low exposures and case counts in our hospitals and all, and then we do, and we meet these vaccination levels, then we have an obligation, and we will go the next step. So we met them. I mean, we met the 75% around the 14th of June, and then we immediately met the 20%, which are national targets as well, you know, in this sense. So I had a commitment to the citizens of the province. I shared that information with my colleagues. We met the 20% earlier than we thought, but nevertheless, that was the trigger. So I guess I feel that, yes, the public health authorities maybe have a different view in Nova Scotia, and so Dr. Strang is evaluating today. But I think if you look across the country, you even look across Atlantic Canada, I mean, our public health officials are pretty much in tune. So I think it's important that we recognize that. But David, something else I think we got to recognize is people are tired of COVID. What we're seeing here is a tension of people that thought, look, we're making progress. We're all vaccinated to similar levels. Why aren't we recognizing that fact and how it impacts the spread of the virus? Because they're seeing cases drop all over dramatically across the country. And I think people are seeing that frustration and they're exercising that at the border.
But, I guess it's not really a bubble if it's open at one end, right? And there was the point
right.
that this is supposed to be an Atlantic bubble, so you can move freely around the 4 provinces. And, I know when it was functioning at its peak, people in my home province of Newfoundland and Labrador vacationing in Nova Scotia, going to New Brunswick, and you were just easing back towards that as a region, and you opened up the New Brunswick border to the rest of Canada. I mean, can't you see how they would be frustrated by that?
Well, but we didn't change our border rules any. Our border rules have remained the same. We've been guarding the Atlantic border for the entire pandemic, be it at Quebec border or with Maine, and then our individual borders when we had some outbreaks and we had to lock down. So we've been doing this from the very beginning and recording all this. So now all we're doing is saying, look, the rest of Canada is in the same place we are with looking at the statistics and the science and saying we can move. We put together a path forward that was not a surprise. We met the hurdles, and I felt an obligation, obviously, to say to the residents here in the province, you did your part, and you continue to do so. We're vaccinating on the second doses at record levels for us, and it's I think we're 4th in the country at the rate of vaccinations. So what do I do to people that are saying, I'm doing my part? Now, Premier, it's up to you to do yours. And that's what I did, and what obviously supported by our public health, or I wouldn't be doing it. We have laid out a program that I'm very confident in because I'm extremely confident in the officials that have kept us on track here from the beginning, whether that's in health, whether it's on the border crossing, whether it's through public health recommendations, the entire system, the contact tracers, all of them have worked diligently. So what do I say? Well, thanks, but we got to wait. I don't think it would be the right thing for me to do in respect of what they've done for us.
Premier Rankin likely has an election coming up maybe this summer or certainly by this fall. That's what all the indications are. Do you think that his moves and the concerns there is there any political component to that, or is this purely public health as you understand it?
I think it's more related to public health and the differences of views, and that's fine. Everyone has their own position. But I think the balance here is people need to understand that the citizens are looking at this and saying, we're doing our part. We followed public health rules. We're getting better. Case counts are 0 or less a day. Less, or 1 or 2 or so in that range. And we're at a point of saying, okay, and when's enough? Because people are tired. So what do we risk here if we don't say, yeah, you're right, we need to keep moving, and people see that hope? We risk people saying, I'm tired of this, I'm going to do what I want anyway, and let's move on. And that's, I think, what we're seeing on the border right now. So we have to balance that.
I wonder what happens, though, if Dr. Strang and Premier Rankin say no to what you proposed at the meeting this afternoon. What happens then?
Well, at this point in time, I guess what will remain is that we will have a situation in New Brunswick. I think that is accepted with PEI in Nova Scotia, or PEI in Newfoundland, and I think it's important that we find a solution with Nova Scotia. But we have a protocol, we have a recommendation from our public health, we have an all-party COVID cabinet committee, that basically approved that back on May 27th. And so we're just following that. So I guess if it'll be their decision to make, but what we've proposed here is an avenue which they can enhance their own rules at their own border and maintain the control they want. And I think that they need to weigh that heavily on their decision.
Okay, Premier Blaine Higgs, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome, David.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.